So I'm Officer Forehand with the Roanoke County Police Department. I'm the Crime Prevention Coordinator, and today I'm going to be talking with Detective Harris and hoping to give y'all some information about fraud and how to avoid being victimized by fraud. And so, Detective Harris, I'll start with, who are you? Both kind of like a little bit snippet of like personally and professionally.
Okay. Well, I'm from this area. I grew up here in Roanoke County, south part of the county, and went to school here. Went off to college for a few years. Got married. I spent the first 3 years of my career at another department, Harrisonburg Police Department, and got started there and really loved it. Loved that area. Beautiful area, as well as the people there. And my wife and I just wanted to move back here to start our family. So we moved back here about 9 years ago. I've been working for the Roanoke County Police Department ever since, in a variety of roles. Started off on patrol, obviously, as everyone does. And then I moved to our professional standards unit. I was there for 4 years doing hiring and recruiting, accreditation and policy management. So in fact, I remember recruiting you. So,
Yeah.
That's one that sticks out to me. Actually, I fought hard to get you here. And then a few years ago, I moved into investigations, which I really love. And I feel like that's kind of my best skill set and what I'm passionate about. So here I am.
Okay. And so then, I know, but a lot of people probably don't. Like, so our investigations unit's broken up into different groups. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so I mean, we have I think about 9 detectives right now, not including the supervisors. But we have some that are just kind of general investigations, some that focus on special victims, and then myself and one other detective focus primarily on the white collar crime or fraud. But we get a little bit of everything. When I say that, that's my primary focus, but we all investigate all sorts of different crimes, especially if I'm the on-call detective. I could, be investigating a homicide or robbery, anything like that. So.
Mm-hmm. And did you choose frauds, or is that just kind of like what allowed you to get your foot in the door? Or?
Well, yeah, I am passionate about fraud and have enjoyed previous investigations I had done. So I actually mentioned that I was interested in that field. I didn't know at the time that most investigators don't like investigating fraud, so it actually ended up being a great fit. I'm interested in something that most people aren't, and was able to fit into that role where there was an opening. But yeah, I learned kind of afterwards that most people don't like it.
And do you know, like, what about it kind of deters most people?
They're very difficult cases to work, very difficult investigations, both on the law enforcement end as well as prosecution. Even when we build a good investigation, it can be difficult to prosecute for various reasons, including jurisdictional issues and just the rules of evidence, getting certain digital data into court, that type of stuff. So they're just difficult, and it's a lot of work, and maybe not as much payoff as you would hope sometimes.
Yeah, I know when I was just on patrol, my issue was, it'd be discouraging. It's like, I know there's a lot of ways I could figure out what happened, and they're almost certainly going to all end in dead ends.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, like, if they're local, you so happen. So, like, is even on the detective side of things, stuff that raise your level. Like, do you all have percentages or stuff of, like, how often it's even possible to get a prosecution? Or
not necessarily, because typically when I'm getting assigned cases, it's because there's at least something to follow up on. So a lot of the cases that y'all take, a patrol officer might take initially, there's just not really anything to follow up on, never get assigned to investigations. So even the cases I'm getting at least have a little bit more to them that we can try to do something with. So the percentages of what I investigate and what gets solved are already pretty low, but that's already a small percentage I'm even seeing on my end. There's probably hundreds of reports that patrol officers are taking that never make it to my desk.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's exactly why I want to talk to you today, because unfortunately, since we don't oftentimes have like all this like ways to get the money back or something, it'd be kind of nice to prevent it. And so what are some of the things that you're seeing, like one of the most common ways people are getting defrauded?
Really, there's such a huge variety of ways, and we really kind of see it all, honestly. So it's hard to pinpoint one. Thinking of some of the most common ones we're seeing, especially right now, we see a lot of check fraud, which is something that was surprising to me, because I know my generation and younger don't use checks as much, maybe as they used to be, but it's still very common. We get a lot of identity theft, obviously, and then there's just a huge variety of scams that it's hard to really touch on all of them or go into detail. But we see a lot of romance scams or lottery scams, telling people they've won some huge prize. Some of the grandparent scams where they're being told a loved one's in trouble and they need to pay money, or using threats saying it's the IRS calling, things like that. So there's really a huge variety, and we kind of see all of it. One that we're seeing a lot of right now is getting phone calls or text messages impersonating the fraud department for financial institutions. We've been hit pretty hard by that recently here in the Roanoke Valley.
Yeah. That'd be pretty frustrating. They're like, hey, I'm here to stop fraud, and it's like they are the fraudsters. So then, you mentioned to me previously about the common crime in Roanoke County is bank fraud investigation impersonators, like you just brought up. And so, what exactly is that?
It typically starts off with the victim receiving a phone call or text message. If it's a phone call, a lot of times it's someone saying, hey, I'm so and so, I'm a fraud investigator with your financial institution, and don't name it. So they say, hey, we noticed some fraudulent activity on your account. Can you tell if this is authorized or not? And they end up working their way into gaining your trust and getting login credentials. They might say something along the lines of, hey, well, just for verification purposes, can you tell me your first and last name or your account information? They might even have an authentication code sent to your phone and say, hey, just for authentication purposes, can you read off that code to me? And they might on their end be prompting your financial institution to send you a code, and then you're giving the scammers that code. So it usually starts off with either that, or you might get just a text message saying, we noticed an unauthorized transaction on your card, reply yes or no. You reply no, and then they start asking permission. Well, hey, we're going to give you a new username and password. Respond with your old username and password, and then now you've just given up your login credentials. So we've seen both of those ways.
Yeah, and I imagine a lot of people are used to being reached out to by their bank institutions, because a lot of people, there is fraud various ways. I think, I had fraud on my account. Don't know what caused it. I'm guessing a waiter. But my bank reached out, solved it real quick and everything. They reached out before I was even aware of it. Now, being an officer, I kind of knew how to verify that it was legitimate. But I imagine a lot of people are used to their bank saying, hey, there's some suspicious activity, and, soliciting some information, but, not as much as the fraudsters will get. So, how could a normal person make sure that they don't get hoodwinked by this person?
Yeah, well, so one way that the scammers try to gain the trust of the victims that you would think would be a safe way, but is truly not, is the phone numbers. Most people know that the number on the back of your card, you can usually call that number to get support if you have an issue with your card or something. So a lot of these scammers are able to spoof the phone numbers, and so it appears on your end that you're getting a phone call from your financial institution. It might show up on your screen as that financial institution calling, and then the scammer might tell you, hey, look at the back of your card, see the number on there, that's the number I'm calling from. But what you got to be wary of is they are able to spoof those numbers, and it's not the actual number that they're calling from, and they can do that in a variety of ways using some applications and other technology. That they're pretty savvy. So you can't just trust the number they're calling from, and just you need to understand that your financial institution is normally not going to ask for personal information over the phone like that. So if anytime you have somebody asking questions like that, red flags should start going off in your head.
Would you say there's one or a few basic templates, or it to figure out fraud, or is it going to be constantly so different you can't ever figure it out, or is there a few basic ways you can tell?
Yeah, well, it's always evolving. So even what we're seeing now, we had a large string of them a few months ago, and now we're getting hit by them again, and there's small variations in it. So they're always evolving. They're always going to evolve. They're going to find out what law enforcement is doing to catch them, or what is causing them to run into legal troubles, what works and what doesn't work for them, and they're going to evolve just like we're going to. So it's a constant battle of them evolving and then us trying to catch up, and then when we catch up, they're going to evolve again. So it's that constant battle. But the biggest thing I can tell people with, especially with that particular type of fraud, is anytime you have concerns about who's on the other line, you can always hang up and then call your financial institution, because that spoofing only works one way. They can spoof the number they're calling you from, but if you hang up and you call your financial institution, the actual number, you're going to reach your actual institution. Or if you have a local branch, it's always safest to just go into your local branch in person.
So then, if there's not necessarily like always one way to say like, oh, this is definitely fraud, what would you say are like basic principles to prevent you from being victimized by fraud? Sounds like one thing you're saying is they're calling you, hang up, and then call the number you definitely know is legitimate. So that sounds like one method.
So like I said, there's so many different types of fraud. It's hard to get into the details of each one, but there's some common like themes, I guess, that you could say that are red flags you should be looking out for. And pretty much anytime you get people combining one of these themes with the fact that they're asking for either personal information like login information or asking for you to send money, you should always be suspicious and be wary of that, obviously. So some of the most common ones are playing on emotion. A lot of the scams we see, you could sit down here and completely unattached to it. If you're just thinking logically, they don't make sense. Like, why would you fall for that? It doesn't make sense. But what the scammers are very good at is hijacking into the emotional side of our brains to make us not think logically. So a lot of times they're playing on some sort of emotion, like romance scams. They're playing on love, making you feel like somebody's caring for you and that you now have grown attachment to this person, even if you never met them. And so now you're thinking emotionally, not logically, or fear. You know, a lot of scams like the IRS, calling saying the IRS and you owe taxes and they're going to send somebody with an arrest warrant if you don't pay right now. They're playing on fear, and that side of your brain might take over you taking a second to think about it logically, or even excitement is another emotion they might play on. You think about the lottery scams. Hey, you just won $5 million and a brand new BMW. All you gotta do is pay, this small tax on it, and you're gonna get your prize. That might seem very appealing or exciting to somebody, and they kind of combine that with the next red flag I'll bring up is urgency. Hey, you need to do this right now for whatever reason. Think about the IRS scam. Pay right now or else you're going to get arrested. Or this is your last chance. The lottery scam, they might say, hey, we need you to pay these taxes as soon as possible or else you're going to lose your opportunity to claim this prize. Whatever it is, they're usually combining the play on emotion with some sort of urgency, making you feel like there's a need to act now as opposed to take the time to think about it. Because they know if you unattach yourself from the situation and actually think about it, switch back to that logical side of your brain, you're more likely to realize that you're being scammed. So those are some of the common red flags. Touch on a couple of the red flags real quick. The payment methods for a lot of these scams are payment methods that have legitimate purpose, but not typically for the things that they're asking for. So you think about gift cards is a huge one. We see a lot of victims of scams making payments through gift cards, being told to go to Walgreens or Dollar Tree and buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars of gift cards and then read the codes over the phone to the scammers. And again, it's that switch between emotional and logical side of the brain. If you think about it logically, why is the IRS asking you for iTunes gift cards? Just take a second to think about it. So gift cards, wire transfers, a big one now, especially with it evolving and becoming more popular, is cryptocurrency. Most people think of Bitcoin, but there's other types as well. And so we see a lot of people being scammed by some sort of cryptocurrency now too. We have Bitcoin ATMs in grocery stores and stuff now that you can go and put your money into the machine and it immediately gets basically switched over to cryptocurrency and goes into the wallet of the scammers, and then they move it, and it's nearly impossible for us to track. And once it goes in that machine, it's pretty much unrecoverable as well. So payment methods can be really off the wall for a lot of these scams. Another big red flag is a lot of scammers like to tell the victims to keep whatever it is a secret or to lie to other people, typically lying to the police. We might get a report of concern that somebody's a victim of a romance scam, for instance, and we go to check on them and to educate them on it. And they just might lie to us about what's really going on, but they're being coached a lot of times by the scammer of what to say. Tell the police this, or if they're being told that they need to withdraw large amounts of money from their bank, they might be told to lie to the tellers about those transactions because they're trained to look out for scams as well and to ask questions to try to ensure people aren't being scammed. But a lot of times the victims are being coached. Tell the financial institution that you're investing in real estate or whatever it is. They feed them what lies to tell. But anytime that they're telling you that they need money, but hey, keep it a secret or tell these lies to people, that should be a huge red flag. And then kind of the last one I'll bring up that's pretty common across a lot of the scams is they like to switch their communication methods to untraditional communication. A lot of the end-to-end encrypted apps, especially like WhatsApp is popular now, or Telegram. So if somebody calls you offering you a job and say, hey, if you want to reach out to us more to hear more about this job, just reach us on WhatsApp. That should be a red flag. I'm not saying that there's impossible that there are legitimate uses for it, but most of the time when you see somebody offering some sort of opportunity through these untraditional methods like Telegram or WhatsApp, a lot of times that's a scam. So those are kind of the most common red flags. Kind of summarize those again, or playing on the emotion, giving a sense of urgency to act, untraditional payment methods, secrecy or lies, and these untraditional communication methods.
Okay, yeah, that's a great summary. So then, so you're saying we dealing with stolen checks and stuff. So I guess for the population that still has check, like how are they getting like check fraud? How's that happening? How's it getting taken? What are they doing to use it?
Yeah, well, it still happens in multiple ways. Some of them are internal thefts from the post office stuff. They might have bad actors internally that could steal the mail once it enters that system. But some happen just from mailboxes as well, whether it be a personal mailbox or a lot of mail theft occurs from the blue drop boxes and stuff along the way. So they have different ways of doing that. It seems like it might be safe to put it in those boxes, but they have ways that they can put a sticky substance on something and basically fish out mail until they find either checks or credit cards, stuff like that they can use. So checks are stolen in multiple ways, but especially from mailboxes or internal thefts from the Postal Service.
Okay. And then they just like sign it, cash it, and
there can be multiple ways that they get used as well too. So a lot of checks can be washed, which is basically where if you filled out this check, they can essentially erase the writing that you've put on the check by putting it in certain solvents and then rewrite over it and put a new number on there and new signature or a new name on the paid order too. So they can basically fill out the new parts of the check with the information that's already on there. So that's one way, but they can also just copy the information that's on there, because you think about your check, it has a routing number and your account number on that, and that's essentially all the information they need to gain access to your account in some form or fashion, and they can create counterfeit checks as well. So just to give one example of that, we had a victim recently that put a check in her mail for $10, and it was just a single check that was stolen somewhere along the way, and 3 counterfeits were made based off of that, and each one was for $2,000, three $2,000 checks. So she ended up being out $6,000 because of a stolen $10 check. So again, those can be used in multiple ways, but I think the biggest tip I can give people on that is that checks might be necessary still in some instances. You can't necessarily eliminate them for all purposes, but if you don't have to mail a check to somebody, I wouldn't. If you have a way to pay through another method like ACH transfer and stuff, those aren't perfect either. There's always ways to, those could be manipulated, but if you don't have to pay by check, you might want to consider other methods. And if you do have to pay by check, but you can take it in person to where it needs to go, if you need to pay your electric bill by check, for instance, if you can go in person there to give them the check as opposed to putting it in your mailbox, it's definitely safer, especially when you consider the fact that our mail here in Roanoke, all of it goes to Greensboro before it comes back. Even if I was mailing a check to my neighbor, it's going to go to Greensboro first. And that just offers the opportunity for that internal theft. We do see a lot of the internal theft happening down in the Greensboro area where our mail goes to. So, I wouldn't pay by check if I don't have to, and I wouldn't mail it if I don't have to.
Yeah. Okay. So is there anything like we haven't touched on that you as a fraud detective, you would want people to stop it on their end before it gets to you? Any other?
Man, there's a lot. There's a lot. Like sit here and talk about for hours and all the different types of fraud. But I think the biggest thing is just, trust your instincts. And anytime you have somebody asking you for money or for personal information that you don't know them personally, or you're not sitting there next to them, take the time to step back from it and think about it and talk to somebody that you love or know or trust. Especially we see a lot of elderly victims get scammed, and they have concerned family members that want to look out for them. And so if they took a second to talk to their family about it, they might be able to prevent some of that. So talk to somebody else that's thinking about it more logically, maybe, instead of emotionally, and don't feel the need to act so urgently. That's the biggest thing. The scammers are counting on you making an emotional decision in the moment. They're counting on that urgent call to action. So if you take a step back, you're going to be okay. And most legitimate things that are going to ask for money or for information for some reason, you're going to have time to make that decision. They're not going to push you to do that immediately.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all the information, and I'm taking the time to come out. And so just like he said, especially for us, the police department, we're not going to ask you for Bitcoin or for gift cards or anything like that. And so if you have doubts and you think anything is suspicious is going on, we'd rather you call us and prevent a report. It's a lot easier to have a 5-minute conversation rather than a 30-minute to an hour report with who knows how much follow-up. So reach out if you have any doubts. Thanks for listening in, and have a good day.